Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you. Shit damn balls. I am a gaming professional. Yeah. I work for Wizards of the Coast, as many of you know. And I work on a game called Dungeons and Dragons. Which might at first blush seem like an odd fit for a show like PAX. But the folks at Penny Arcade are huge D&D fans. It is like crack to them. So, but also, D&D has in its DNA the building blocks for a lot of the games that we know and love today, video games particularly. Its DNA is in those games. D&D is the game that has brought us hit points and armor class and experience points and saving throws. Many other concepts that video games have adopted and developed over the years. I'd like to tell you a story about D&D's impact on the gaming industry, but also, more importantly, about its impact on me. I'd also like to share a short story about my little-known, all-too-brief career in video game design. And time permitting, share a couple quick D&D anecdotes that hopefully you'll find fun. My job at Wizards is to create stories that drive D&D entertainment across all platforms. What that means is when I'm not working on actual D&D products, I'm creating these story Bibles that go out to people in our company and our business partners that they use to tie together their products with our big stories. These are my spirit animals. And these are my ability scores. Those of you who know me are probably thinking, 8 charisma? Really? Don't you think that's a little high? In 1983, D&D flirted briefly with, for a while with a 7th ability score. Does anybody remember what that was called? Comeliness. Yes, comeliness. It measured how attractive you were. So you have strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and how attractive you were. It never really caught on because, well, gamers care more about inner beauty. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I'm lawful good. If you've watched me DM, you are aware of certain chaotic evil tendencies. So I grew up with D&D. I've had a lifelong love affair with D&D. When I was 13, I was playing basketball with my next-door neighbor, David, and had an epiphany that I would one day work in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, at a company called TSR, which was then making D&D. That dream died when TSR folded, but it was bought by Wizards of the Coast, and that's where I ended up. So while I never actually landed in Lake Geneva, I did find a place out in Seattle working on the game that I love, a game that emphasizes collaboration above competition. More importantly, like many other games, it provides much-needed escapism. When playing D&D, we can be ourselves while simultaneously leaving ourselves behind to pretend to be someone else for a while. We can create worlds, breathtaking, magical places that we wish were real, and dark, dystopian, horrible worlds that we're glad aren't, and actually make us feel better about the real world that we live in. This is a game where we can confront failure without dire consequence. It's a game that creates fond memories, as real on some level as memories we have of real life. D&D's early days were defined by dungeons. In fact, D&D kind of took the word dungeon and turned it into something completely new at the time, which was this concept of labyrinthine, underground treasure vaults full of traps, monsters, and loot. I grew up with these. These were my storybooks. Adventure modules, they were called. Each one focused on a distinctive dungeon location. There was the adventure module with the Aztec temple dungeon. There was the one with the Pharaoh's tomb. There was the one with the Gothic castle. The plots were simple, but the dungeons were very complex. They looked like this. A typical dungeon was basically this Gygaxian labyrinth of rooms that just happened to lock to a 10-foot square grid every time. Behold the origins of a gaming industry profession that would come to be known as level design. My gateway into the gaming industry was also called Dungeon, a series of magazines that contained short adventure modules that I deconstructed and imitated so that I could eventually become published in them and basically shoehorn my way into the company that I loved. And it worked. I started pitching ideas to the editors, and they hated every one of them. The hardest part for me was coming up with ideas that someone hadn't already pitched to them. And as I started to send more and more ideas, I started to understand what the editors were looking for, and eventually I was able to succeed in giving them something that they wanted. D&D is also about dragons, and dragons also figured I didn't do it. Dragons also figured prominently in my professional development. I'm not talking about flying dragons, I'm talking about these dragons. This is another gateway to adventure for many of the people who grew up in the gaming industry that I grew up in. It's a sister publication of Dungeon Magazine, and these magazines contained information that helped propel and feed my stories. Things like, who are the dwarven gods? I want to know more about them. Or, I want to know more about the 9 hells. I'm going to read all about that. Or, I want to know about elf orgies. Yeah, elf orgies. That's going to be a fun add to my game. Hey, there's an article in Dragon Magazine, seriously, about elf orgies. Herein, but even more important than the content, here in this series of magazines was born the D&D community. There was no chat room. There was no forums online. There were no Reddit and subreddit. There was nothing like that. This was where the community was born. As D&D evolved, it began to focus less on adventures and more on world building, which worlds are much bigger than dungeons. And in the 1990s, we saw an explosion of D&D world design. There were D&D worlds for everyone, worlds that could serve as the foundation for any story you wanted to tell in any genre. You need a planet of war and romance, Dragonlance, Kryn, great, yeah. You want an apocalyptic D&D world, you got Dark Sun. You want to explore the planes of the multiverse, you want to do Oriental adventures, you want to do Gothic adventures, you want to do gnomes in space. We had worlds for you. We had a campaign setting called Spelljammer, and I ran a Spelljammer campaign for 5 years, all about D&D in space. And of course, the biggest world of them all, the Forgotten Realms, about which more has been written than Middle-earth and Star Wars combined. It gave us this. And these. And this. Our worlds gave us these and this. And most recently, these. Yes, MMOs. But I would be remiss in talking about D&D if I didn't also bring up one key moment in its history, and that is in the early 1980s, D&D's growing popularity turned to notoriety when groups of Christian conservatives accused the game of corrupting the minds of nerds across America. Essentially branding a bunch of basement-dwelling troglodytes as minions of the devil. This had the unforeseen, or perhaps foreseen, consequence of sensationalizing D&D and elevating its visibility enormously, which also had the unintended effect of making it even more popular, so that in the years that followed, we would see this pattern repeat itself with other games like, oh, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto. Which brings me to a period in my life between 1992 and 1994. Now, something you might not know about me is that I worked on a video game in 1992 that was published in 1994. Now, raise your hand if you weren't yet born in 1992. Damn. Damn, I'm old. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. The game was Traffic Department 2192. People are going, what? You worked on that? Yes, this was my first foray into video games. As it says, everything you need on one 3.5-inch diskette. And everybody who put up their hand is like, what the fuck is a 3.5-inch diskette? So TD 2192 is a story about a cyborg police officer in a futuristic interceptor protecting the city streets by blowing up scumbags. It's basically Grand Theft Auto circa 1992. Now, I was 25, and I was teaching English in high school. One of my students, John, approached me and said he was working on a video game. He had some graphics and the beginnings of a top-down scrolling cityscape, but he had no story to support any of this. So for him, I created a protagonist. I created a series of heavily scripted missions and cutscenes, and provided situations that would arise only in the event of mission failure or mission success. And I used interstitial dialogue to develop characters within the game. As the missions became more difficult, my lone protagonist would become increasingly bitter. That was my plan. Basically, creating a good cop with a bad attitude who wasn't getting any support. When I designed all this, the character I had in mind was basically an over-the-hill man, kind of in the last years of his service. And then I decided, on a whim, to change it to a woman. Why? Because I hadn't seen a strong, independent female protagonist in a video game before. And when I made that decision, or when we made that decision, I went back into the script and the missions with the intention of changing it, and realized that I didn't have to change anything. That all of the words that had been created, all the dialogue that had been created, it didn't matter that it was coming out of the mouth of a woman, because it turns out women can do anything men can do. a quarter century since, I've worked mainly on print products, magazines, rule books. My forte is adventure modules. And now, in the twilight years, I am doing transmedia stories, which is a catchphrase that means stories that are meant to be told across multiple forms of media simultaneously. So when not working on books, I'm creating these stories that are designed for these multiple platforms and then working with other companies like Cryptic Studios to make these stories real and to find ways to tell the story for each medium. And our current one is called Storm King's Thunder. It's all about giants. Check it out. Cryptic has expansions for it, too, for the Neverwinter MMO plug. But books aside, games aside, I'm probably best known for my work as a dungeon master. Not this dungeon master. This kind of dungeon master. The kind who crafts stories, puts it in front of a group of players, watches them poke holes in it, tear it to pieces, go off in strange directions they're not supposed to, and make it their own. So the DM is part writer, part director, part editor, part cat wrangler. But the movie, the novel, the story that you're telling, the story that's being written is happening while we play. And how it ends can depend on the roll of a die or some crazy decision that one of the players makes in a peak fit of madness. It's like if Lord of the Rings was happening in real time and the actors knew their characters so well, we're just making things up on the fly, and things were happening as a consequence of their decisions. The power of D&D and the power of games like D&D is the unscripted shared storytelling that it provides. I didn't, and D&D didn't, invent the concept of unscripted shared storytelling, but it's part of what makes D&D hard to replicate in the digital arena, although many people are trying. This past decade, we have seen a renaissance of unscripted storytelling. What we discovered is that you can run a D&D game for an audience, and people will watch it. Why? It's just some dude sitting around a table rolling dice and making funny voices. How could this possibly be mainstream entertainment? Well, the reason it's proven to be successful is people care about what happens to characters, and they want to see what happens next. And the good thing about this is nobody at the table knows what's going to happen next. This It's been a great honor to be part of Acquisitions Incorporated for many, many reasons. First and foremost, getting to sit down and play with creative people whose work I truly admire and whose comedic talents are far surpassed my own. But Acquisitions Incorporated, I think, represents unscripted storytelling at its best. I'll take a game table and some dice over a campfire and weenies any day. And it started off as a series of podcasts and then evolved into a series of live games, and now, of course, we're putting up holiday specials and other crazy crap, and we have even more crazier crap coming in the years to come. It spawned things like shows like this one. Or let's say it didn't spawn. Let's say it may have inspired on some level shows like Critical Role, which if you haven't seen, it's a bunch of very, very talented, horrifically talented voice actors sitting around playing D&D. It is, right now, the best live stream D&D experience I think you can get, with one of the most amazing dungeon masters you'll ever find on the planet. And it set the stage for a whole bunch of other live stream games that have popped up since, and they've all got tremendous casts, and they've all got tremendous stories to tell in their own worlds. And I actually run one myself. I have a weekly game. It's called Dice Camera Action. We just wrapped up season 1, which was all about Curse of Strahd. The characters were in the land of Barovia fighting the vampire lord, the master of Castle Ravenloft. And at this time, I would like to draw some attention to Mr. Shambleface, who is a character of sorts who came out of our live-streamed game. One of my players is Holly Conrad. You might know her better as Commander Holly. And yes, she's a very, very gifted young woman. And she created a puppet of Strahd called Mr. Shambleface, which I now have sitting on a shelf in my bedroom at home. And that puppet, I decided I liked it so much that I was going to make it a central feature of my game, and the party's life would depend on their use of this puppet as a tool to thwart the vampire Strahd. Live games on Twitch and other platforms, including this weekly game, are just going to keep coming because there's no limit to the number of stories that you can tell with D&D. So as the technology develops, I look forward as a DM and as a person who's just interested in the technology of Twitch and the potential of reaching out through digital space. I look forward to making the experiences more interactive, more enjoyable for our fans. One of the things I hear about these kinds of shows is it feels just like episodic TV. And hey, I can watch it as it's happening, or I can binge watch it on YouTube afterward. Shared storytelling is in our DNA. As human beings, ever since we've sat around campfires, we have engaged in this activity. We can't give it up. It's part of our nature. And technology is getting better at facilitating this shared storytelling. It lets us connect from afar and to share our stories with a much bigger audience than we could ever before. God, if I'd had this when I was running my games in high school, man, oh man, you would have seen what a shitty-ass DM I was. But I would have loved it. YouTube videos, Twitch streams, these are all just the beginning. So, a little story. I'm on a quest. This is a quest that's going to probably take me 5, 10 years to complete. I'm looking for storytellers. Storytellers to distract me from all the crazy crap that's happening in this world. I need storytellers to give me games that are going to allow me to escape. I'm looking for storytellers to create games that can help me interact with worlds that are better than this one, or worse than this one. Because whether it's a world that makes me feel better about myself or a world that makes me feel worse, it's different from the world I'm in. I can escape to the better world, and I can use the worse world to make me feel better about this world, if you know what I mean. I'm looking for games with characters and situations that speak to me on some human level, and I think we all are. I'm also looking for storytellers, honestly, to work with. The big question in my mind, as I rocket toward 50, is who will represent D&D's next generation of custodians and caretakers? Who's going to shepherd this game after I'm, I don't know, making porn? That's what happens to game designers when they turn 55, right? I don't know. I don't know any game designers who are 55. No, seriously, I am seriously considering now who is going to be the next generation, who is going to carry my brand forward. And I know there are other game companies out there looking for storytellers for the same reasons. But I can't tell you what Blizzard or Nintendo is looking for. But I can at least share with you a few of the questions I'm now starting to ask myself when I meet other people with an interest in breaking into the industry or have a history of making games. And one of the questions is, would I want you in my D&D game? It's sort of a strange question to ask, but if the answer is yes, it's because I think you're a fundamentally decent, humorous, and intelligent human being. It's a good bellwether for me. The other question I ask myself is, what have you created? I like games. On a resume is meaningless. To people in my profession, that's like saying, I breathe air. But I create games, or I write stories, or I've created this other cool thing that you might like. That carries a lot of weight with me because it demonstrates that you are a creative soul and that you've actually committed to do something. And the last question I ask myself is, can you play nice in a sandbox environment? Because games have budgets, and games have rules, and games have their own identities to protect. They're brands. Unless you're self-employed and making your own game for yourself to sell, you're not creating your own thing in a vacuum when you're working on a game like D&D. No, you're working with other people. And you're working on a game that has limitations and expectations beyond your own. Will your brand of creativity work within the bounds of the game or story that we, a group of us, are trying to create? That's what the sandbox is all about. Fact might have passed you by, but last year, D&D was inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame. Yeah! Woo! That's right. Alongside the swing, apparently. But seriously, the Hall of Fame includes games like checkers, chess, the Atari 2600 game system, yeah, the Nintendo Game Boy, board games like Candyland and Monopoly, and games like Twister, and even the Rubik's Cube. That is a big honor, and a lot of people over the years, over D&D's 40-plus years, have basically helped get that game there. But what that tells me is that this little nerd niche thing has really kind of become an icon of human life and human entertainment. And when you do look at the other people or the other products that are part of this Hall of Fame, you really feel that D&D has crossed a threshold into a much more mainstream culture. One of the most interesting conversations I ever had at work was with one of the directors over on the Magic the Gathering team, who said, I wish that Magic had D&D's cultural penetration, which blew my mind because Magic as a business is 10, 50 times bigger than anything else Wizards does. It's just immense. But D&D's recognition has really, really penetrated to our souls as human beings. And I think it's because at its heart, it is good. And it does good things. It does good things for people. It does good things for friendships. It does good things for the gaming community. It creates a sense of belonging. It creates a sense of diversity. And there is no limit to the stories that you can tell in this game and to the imagination that you can invest in this game. And when video games tap into that, D&D is screwed. But I think that's going to be a long time coming. Now, if you've never played D&D, and there's probably, how many of you have never played D&D? Raise your hand. Okay, there's actually quite a few. One of the things you can do now, which you couldn't do in my day, is you can watch D&D games online, and they are entertaining. But you can also go to the Wizards website. You can download the basic rules of the game for free. You can also download character sheets for free. Another good first step, if you haven't tried, is the D&D starter set. And I'm sorry if I'm plugging shit. It's just, it felt natural at this point in the presentation to do it. And honestly, the more D&D players in the world, the happier the world will be. So the starter set, if you've never picked it up, is the basic rules with dice, with character sheets, and an adventure set in the Forgotten Realms. The adventure is really good. It sort of captures the essence of D&D and leaves a lot of room for you as a dungeon master, or whoever is the dungeon master, to kind of put their own spin on things. Ha, die, spin, get it? Anyway, natural one on that joke, yeah. So the venues that I used to break into the industry, they're not around anymore, and that's because the internet has changed everything. If you want to create D&D content, you can. You can even share it with a very ravenous community who consumes D&D content faster than we can create it. There is a website called the Dungeon Masters Guild, dmsguild.com. It's been created specifically for a new generation of D&D content creators. You can design D&D content, set your own price for that content, and sell it on the site. And not only will you get dollars back for your trouble, but you will also get feedback in the form of fan reviews, which will hopefully inform and improve future content. You can also use the DM's Guild to learn more information about the history of D&D. And D&D has a great history. And all of the old content that's been created for D&D over the years, or almost all of it, is now up on the site in PDF form. And one of the things that the site did was, for each product, it includes a write-up that talks about the history and the origins of that product. And I, who have been working at this company for 10,000 years, have learned things that I didn't know about how some of the earliest D&D products were created. So it is ripe for story. Now, at the show, you are going to probably talk to a number of game designers, professional game designers who work for companies. And you can ask any one of them, how has D&D made you the person you are today? And I'd be willing to bet that they all will have their own stories to share. Most of them will involve bad die rolls, friends making very poor in-game decisions, and cruel DM tricks. A game is nothing without its community. And I am very happy to be part of this one. So thank you. Any game, no game can survive without a healthy community. And we've seen games become poisoned when the community becomes poisonous. But D&D brings out the best in people. And I'd like to share just a couple short D&D anecdotes. How many of you are familiar with a magic item called a potion of longevity? Okay. In this presentation, I've talked a lot about time and age, and this one always springs to mind. So a potion of longevity is a potion that you can drink that will make you younger. And in the rules of the game, no matter how many potions of longevity you drink, you can never be younger. You can never age yourself younger than 13. Can you guess why? This isn't a joke, it's just interesting information. But why did we pick 13, I wonder? Because our game is PG-13. Ah. So we're basically saying, in a very abstract, underhanded way, you can't play a character under the age limit recommended for the game. And given the many D&D games that I've been in over the years, it's probably for the best. PG-13, yeah. So there's an interesting story factoid for you. Another short anecdote. How many of you are familiar with a magic item called the alchemy jug? Okay, this stupid item is a big fat jug that's too big to put in any sort of backpack or bag, so you kind of have to carry it around with you like this. And it's got all these spigots sticking out of it, and it's magical, and when you pull one of the spigots open, it will disgorge liquid, one of several types of mundane liquids. Beer. Beer, wine. Now, Jeremy Crawford, who is one of the creators, architects of 5th edition, I was working with him in the summer of 2014 at work, and the air conditioner at WotC was broken. And we were there over the weekend in 95-degree weather. Jeremy had just come off of the player's handbook, and I had just come off of the monster manual, and we were frantically trying to piece together the third one, the Dungeon Master's Guide. Sorry, senior moment. And we got to the alchemy jug, and we were both so exhausted and we were both so infuriated by the heat that we started to put in stupid ideas for what the alchemy jug could possibly spit out. Many of them couldn't see print, but the one that we left in, was mayonnaise. And the reason, the actual reason, is because Jeremy and I knew that the next time we'd go to a convention, or conventions for the rest of our life, somebody was going to walk up to us and tell us the story about how their barbarian covered themselves in mayonnaise to get out of some stupid situation that the DM created, or to slip out of the grasp of a monster, or God knows what. Like, all kinds of filthy things started to run through our minds at that point. And we thought, yes, mayonnaise, because that is going, as stupid as it is, I don't know if there's mayonnaise in the D&D world, but as stupid as that is, it is going to create so many good stories, that it is totally worth it. It is worth the absurdity in an official core rulebook for the sake of the story. But also, honestly, like you, we're just 13 years old at heart. So let's all be 13 again. Let's get out there, play some games, make some new friends, talk about the stories that have defined us, that inspire us, and then help us get away from the trials of the world. There are no enemies here, just friends. Enjoy the con.